The girl arrived on a Wednesday, in the back of a grain merchant's cart, wrapped in a sack. That was how Wren Ashby heard it told, anyway. Later, by the merchant himself, a red-faced man named Colbus, who stood in Wren's doorway, and said he had found her at the side of the Thornpass Road. And what was he supposed to do? Leave her there? He said it the way a man says something he already knows the answer to, but hopes someone will argue with him. Wren did not argue. He took the child. She was small, smaller than she should have been for her age, which Wren put somewhere between 5 and 7 by the state of her teeth and the length of her. Her skin was the deep green gray of river stone. Her tusks were barely nubbed, still coming in. Her hair was dark and matted against the side of her face, and she had not said a word. Not in the cart, not on the road, not standing now in Wren's front room looking up at him with eyes the color of dark amber that held absolutely nothing in them, not fear, not curiosity, nothing. That was the part that worried him most. Does she have a name? Wren asked. Colbus shrugged. None she's given. Where did you find her exactly? Milepost 9 on the Thornpass. Just sitting there. No camp nearby. No one on the road. Wren looked at the child. The child looked at a point somewhere past Wren's left ear. All right, he said. Leave her with me. Colbus looked relieved in a way that made Wren feel tired. He had been feeling tired in that particular way for a long time now. The way that comes. Not from lack of sleep, but from being the kind of man people bring things to. He was the only physician in Dunhallow. He had been for 11 years, since his wife Marette died, and he had nothing else to do with his hands. The house was big for one person. He knew that. The village knew that. People brought him their fevers and their broken things, and occasionally, apparently, their orc children. He fed her broth that first night. She ate it without looking at him. He showed her the back bedroom, and she went into it without a word, and he heard no sound from it until morning. He told himself it would be a few days. He would ask around. Someone would know something. A week passed. No one knew anything. Or if they did, they weren't saying. The village of Dunhallow was not cruel, exactly, but it had the particular wariness of a frontier town, the kind of place where people kept their doors and their opinions both fairly close to the chest. An orc child with no family and no name was not something Dunhallow knew what to do with. They told Wren so, patiently and at some length, and then they waited for him to do something about it. He gave the child a name in the meantime, Pip. She didn't respond to it, but she didn't not respond to it either. And it was something to call her when he set her bowl down. He was with him in the surgery one morning, sitting in the corner with a piece of charcoal and a bit of flat wood, drawing shapes Wren couldn't interpret, when the knock came. He heard it from the surgery. 3 knocks, evenly spaced. Not the knock of someone who expected to be turned away, and not the knock of someone in a hurry. Deliberate, patient. He opened the door. The woman on his step was tall, taller than anyone in Dunhallow by a good measure, with dark green skin weathered at the jaw and temples and ink, black hair worn in a thick braid over one shoulder. She was dressed in a traveling coat that had seen considerable distance. She had a healer's satchel buckled to her back, the kind worn by someone who lived and worked from the road. Her tusks were full, and the lower ones curved slightly outward the way they did in mountain clan women. Her eyes were steady and dark, and she was looking at Wren with an expression he recognized. The expression of someone who has prepared for a fight and does not especially want one, but will not flinch from it either. I'm told, she said, that you have a child here, an orc girl. Dark hair, riverstone complexion. Perhaps 6 years old, doesn't speak. Wren said nothing for a moment. Then, who's asking? My name is Vora Dunmere. I'm a traveling herbalist. She paused. I've been looking for her for 2 years. He studied her face. She let him. You'd better come in, he said. He put the kettle on. She sat at his kitchen table with her coat still on and told him the shape of it in plain, measured sentences, the way a person tells a difficult story they have told themselves many times in private and learned to carry without falling apart. She had been working at a border resettlement camp at Cauldron Pass 2.5 years ago, one of the rough, temporary places that had sprung up when the Eastern clan conflict sent people moving. The camp had been struck by fire in the night. She had gotten the girl out. The girl had been alone, no family Vora could find, too young and too frightened to say her name. She had meant to take her further west that same week. Then the road bridge at the Dunor River had given out under a supply wagon, and the river had taken 3 people, and a good amount of everything else, including, for one terrible half hour, the child. Vora had found her again an hour downstream, cold and clinging to a log, had put her back in dry blankets and a warm cart. And then, 3 days later, at a crossroads where Vora had gone ahead on foot to check the road, the cart driver had panicked at something. She never found out what, and gone, with the child and everything else in it. She was in my care, Vora said. I lost her. I have been trying to find her ever since. The kettle boiled. Ren poured. He set a cup in front of her, and she wrapped both hands around it, and he could see from the way she held it that she was tired in a way that had been going on for a long time. She doesn't speak, he said. Hasn't since she arrived? I know. She didn't speak after the river either. She spoke before the campfire. Vora looked at the surface of her tea. She used to ask the names of everything, every plant, every tool. What is that? What is that? What is that? A short pause. She hasn't asked anything since. He told her what he knew, which was not much. The grain merchant. Milepost 9. The shape she drew with charcoal. The way she ate her broth, carefully, completely, like someone who had learned not to waste. Vora listened to all of it without interrupting. When he finished, she said, I'm not going to take her against her will. She's been moved against her will enough. I wasn't going to make you fight me for her, Ren said. She looked at him. She had expected something else from him. He could see that, some negotiation, some suspicion, some version of what are you to her. He couldn't tell if his not saying any of that made things easier or harder for her. There's a room down the hall, he said. It's free. Stay as long as you need. Let her come to you. Vora was quiet for a moment. Then, you're a strange man. I've been told that. I mean it as a good thing. I know, he said. Tea's still hot. She stayed. It was not easy, at first. Pip, the child, had not offered any other name, and Vora didn't press her, watched the orc woman from a careful distance, not with fear, more the way a creature that has learned to be still watches something new in its territory. Not hostile, not trusting, simply attending. Ren observed this from the surgery doorway and said nothing. Vora was patient with a patience that had been built out of hard material. She did not rush the child or speak loudly at her or try to win her with treats. She simply existed in the same rooms. She ground her dried plants at the kitchen table in the evenings and let the smell of them do what it did. Something clean and slightly wild, the smell of rootwork and hillside. Once Ren heard her begin to hum softly while she worked. He didn't go in. On the fourth morning of this, Pip came and stood beside Vora's chair. She stood there for a long time. Vora kept grinding, steady and quiet, not looking up. Then the child reached out and touched the rim of the mortar with one finger. That's yarrow, Vora said, without looking up. It stops a wound from bleeding. Want to smell it? Pip leaned in and smelled it. Vora went back to grinding. Ren, who had witnessed this from the hallway, went back to his surgery and pretended to be cataloging his tinctures for a while. After that, things shifted. Slowly the way the season shifted. Not in one moment, but in a long accumulation of small ones. Pip began sitting closer at meals. She began following Vora into the garden in the mornings, watching her check Ren's herb rows. She began picking things up and bringing them to Vora without being asked. A particular stone, a yellowed leaf, a piece of bark, and waiting. That's good wood sorrel, Vora would say. Or that's elm. You can make a tea from the inner bark for a chest cough. Or once, with the stone. That's just a nice rock. I'd keep it too. Ren watched all of this and felt something happening in his house that he could not have named precisely, but recognized the shape of. Something filling. He was not unaware of Vora herself. He was 58 years old and had been a widower for 11 years, and he was not a foolish man. But he was also not a dead one. He noticed the particular steadiness of her. The way she moved through a room, unhurried. The way she listened, which was not simply waiting to speak but actual listening, the kind that changed how she said things. He noticed that she was funny in a dry, quiet way she did not particularly advertise, and that she had strong opinions about the organization of drying herbs which she expressed once, and then kept to herself, when he didn't immediately reorganize his rafters. He did not say anything about any of this. There was too much else present. The child, the careful rebuilding of trust, the fragile new thing in the house that none of them wanted to break. He kept his hands in his pockets, metaphorically speaking, and he made supper, and he swept the floor, and he watched his household become something he had not planned on. 2 weeks became 4. The first cold came down off the Ashran range. Ren cut extra wood. Vora helped him stack it without being asked, and then gave him a look that said she knew how to do it better. And he gave her a look that said he knew that, and she took over, and he went and found something else to do. and he was smiling when he did it. Pip came to the table that night without prompting, which she always did now, and sat down and arranged her fork on her napkin, the way Vora had shown her, which she had only been shown once and retained absolutely. They were eating, the good quiet eating of a household that had found its rhythm when it happened. Ren passed the bread. Pip took a piece. She held it in both hands. She looked at it for a moment, and then she said in a small, clear voice that they had not heard before and that went through Ren like something bright. Home, not his name, not Vora's name, not please or thank you or any of the several useful things a child might say first. Just the one word, stated simply, the way she might have stated any fact. That the yarrow stopped bleeding, that the elm bark was good for a chest cough. Home. Neither of them spoke. Ren set down the bread knife. Vora's hands went still. Pip took a calm bite of her bread, as though she had simply answered a question someone had asked her and had now moved on. The fire in the stove talked quietly to itself. Outside, the first frost of the season was settling over the fields, silver and certain, on the grass and the garden and the wood pile Vora had stacked with Ren's wood. After a while, Vora reached out and put her hand over Ren's hand on the table. She didn't say anything. He didn't say anything. They sat there, the three of them, in the warm and ordinary light of a kitchen that had been too quiet for a long time. No one talked about leaving that night. No one talked about leaving the next morning. The frost held through the week, and the week turned, and by the time the real cold came down from the mountain passes, all three rooms at the back of Ren Ashby's house had a pair of boots by the door. A physician who had spent 11 years being the man people brought things to had finally been brought something he did not want to give back, and neither, it turned out, had she.